Good morning. Welcome to the National Endowment for Democracy for a session featuring Georgian pro-democracy, pro-European leaders, some in parliament, all active. Is Georgia a European country whose future is potentially in European and transatlantic institutions, or is it part of the Russian Empire waiting to be reclaimed by the Kremlin? Putin has ideas about that. He thinks Georgia is a mere insignificant breakaway, exotic republic that will sooner or later be absorbed. Georgians aren't Russians. That privilege he extends to Belarusians and Ukrainians, that he said form a triume, a trinity of the great Russian nation. He said so a few days ago. Georgia is not part of Russia, but it is an adjunct, in his view, to Russia. Georgia has, for the past generation, been developing the basis to live as a democracy, a country part of Greater Europe, and with the EU decision to give Georgia EU candidacy status, a potential member not just of Greater Europe, but of Inner Europe, institutional Europe. That was a good decision by the European Union. And it followed a debate in Georgia, a debate in Europe, a debate that I heard when I was last in Tbilisi in early September at the McCain conference. The EU basically said to Georgia, the road to Europe is open to you, but you must walk on that road yourselves. We will help, but that is up to you. That's about the size of it. Georgia, the Baltic countries think they have bad geography, but they're lucky. Georgia's period of post-1917 independence was short. It wasn't 20 years like the Baltic states. It was 3-4 years, depending on when you're counting. But that tradition, nevertheless, is real. Georgia, Tbilisi, during the Tsarist period, had a liberal reputation. The Bolsheviks were never strong there. It was a Menshevik town. That's where the left was oriented, and there was a liberal tradition. So the Georgians can make a case for their own European nature dating back to the 19th century. Well, good, but now they must build on it, which I haven't talked about the current Georgian government or Georgian dream, and it's not clear what they intend for Georgia. To some people, it is very clear what they intend for Georgia, and it's nothing good. But as an American, I can say that we don't take part in Georgian politics. We work with the government the Georgian people gives us, but we also work according to our larger values. And we have never disguised our concern about some of the moves the current Georgian government has taken. The pressure it has put on civil society, the pressure it has put on the media, the use of really Kremlin-like rhetoric to try to weaken the space for civil society. But Georgian civil society is not weak. It is strong. So Georgia's future is not known, but our guests today have views. National Endowment for Democracy is dedicated to the proposition, as Lincoln said, that the principles of the Declaration of Independence, that all people are created equal, as all men are created equal at the time, in the language of the time, applied, as Lincoln said, to all people at all times. All people at all times. It was a nation founded on the basis of universal principles. We have often strayed from those principles. Ned believes that those principles are critical to our foreign policy, and since the 1980s has worked to advance them. That's our mission. That's it. And our programs in what we call Eurasia, meaning Russia, the South Caucasus, and Central Asia, take place under what can be politely called difficult circumstances. The person in charge of those programs is Miriam Lanskoy. She has the unenviable task of supporting these programs under conditions where the Russian services are actively targeting all of us and all of our programs all the time. That's life in the business. But the fact that we are able to exist and have those programs is a testament to the skill, tenacity, and creativity of the NED staff. And it's a pleasure, therefore, to introduce Miriam, who can then introduce our guests. So Miriam, the floor is yours, and thank you for coming.
So yes, please, please join me. And I will. So thank you so much, Ambassador Freed. It's wonderful for us to be here and to welcome our guests. This is a panel of women politicians from Georgia who have been amazing activists in favor of democracy, and they're our good friends for many years. So let me start with Tina Hidasheli. She is a former defense minister, former parliamentarian, and now a think tanker with Civic Idea, which looks at Chinese influence in the region and has a kind of geopolitical, analytical frame. Next to her is Anna Natsvilashvili, who is a member of parliament from the Lalo party and is one of the founders of the Lalo party. And prior to that, she was the legal secretary to President Margvelashvili a few years back. And, you know, we have bios, there's many more past associations for each of them. Next to her is Anna Butchakuri, who's a member of parliament from for Georgia party, which is affiliated with the former Prime Minister, Georgi Gaharia. And she also has had a number of past positions. She's a professor, and she's also was part of the Human Rights Ombudsman's office a few years back. And next to me is Hatia Dekanoidze. She's a member of parliament, now independent, was part of the UNM, and she also has had numerous positions with the OSCE, with the National Police of Ukraine. She was one of the Georgian reformers who was based in Ukraine to push forward the police reform. And she was a minister of education in Georgia back in 2012. So this is women with tremendous experience in Georgian politics. And it's a really important time to be looking at Georgia. It's both a moment when they were just granted candidate status, and when we were planning this, it was very much the main focus of the event, as well as it's a year out to the elections, and we're starting to analyze the the period ahead of that. So Tina, we'll start with you and maybe do some scene setting about candidate status with Georgia backsliding the way that it has been, with Georgian Dream, insulting the EU ambassador, the US ambassador, with the attempt to pass the Russian-style NGO law, the attempt to impeach the president, many things I could name. How did Georgia still get this status? How did this happen? Were you surprised by this, and how do you evaluate this?
Thank you, Miriam. Instruction. Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to Ned and the Atlantic Council for hosting this event. It's always very important for us, and I'm happy to say that it's not just 4 of us, but there are lots of hundreds of thousands of Georgians who are happy to be friends in Washington, to have friends in Washington, to talk to as many people as possible in Washington, and make sure that what Ambassador Denfried just said, that Georgia's future is not defined, is not true. And to make sure that that future is defined and fixed exactly as it is fixed in our constitution. And Georgian constitution very specifically, very clearly says that Georgia belongs to European Union and NATO. And this is the goal, foreign policy goal that my country has, and none of us are ready to give up on that fight as long as this goal materializes and we actually get the membership in both institutions, which automatically for us means more security, more confidence in building our own state. No, I was not surprised by the European Union's decision because regardless of all the mistakes, and mistake is a very mild word, believe me, to say about the actions of my government, because I believe that different from the representatives of Georgian current government, there are people out there in the world who think strategically and who respect the countries and people of those countries, and who understand very clearly that having Georgia on board or not is not about one particular prime minister who happens to be head of the government at this very moment, but this is about the 30 years of fight of Georgians with the EU and NATO flags in our hands and dying for this cause, literally speaking, dying, because Georgia went through different circles of war, starting from '92, against the Russian occupying force, temporarily losing its almost 20% of its territories, having Russian soldiers on the ground in 2 regions of Georgia, and official recognition of independent states on the territory of Georgia by Moscow. And we believed that that wisdom in Brussels would prevail. And the Commission, as well as we believe Council in December, will give that credit or reward, call it as you want, to the Georgian people and to Georgia as a state. Altogether, the whole country, the whole Georgia, for these 30 years, those who died in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in wars in Abkhazia, in South Ossetia, and who are dying right now for the same cause in Ukraine. As you probably know, there are lots of Georgians who are fighting in Ukraine together with our Ukrainian brothers against Russian military forces, regardless of the opinions, positions, political statements made by the government, because this is the decision of the Georgian people to be there. We are the security of our country, first of all, obviously, but also of Europe requires us to be. But what Miriam was just saying, unfortunately, it's all true. Georgian government embarked on this train after the war started in Ukraine. They've got very confused and lost. Probably they were the only people in the world who were not absolutely expecting the war and full-scale aggression by Russia. I don't know why, because they are government of a country which is under the aggression and occupation of Russia. But still, it found them in a surprise. They were lost. They lack experience. They lack professionalism, decisiveness in making right, correct, strategic decisions. And that's why they've started making mistakes one after another. The whole international politics or foreign policy of Georgia got directed by this one question. Every time there was a critical decision to be made in Tbilisi, they would sit around the table and answer the question what Kremlin will think about it, what Russia will think about it. And when your foreign policy is directed by this fear, and not your national strategic interests, but by the fear of an enemy force, obviously, then you do what they do. And your policies are not guided anymore by the strategic interests of your country. That's why they saw enemy everywhere. They saw enemies in Washington, they saw enemies in Brussels, in London, in Berlin, everywhere. And of course, they've got criticized. And every time they've got criticized, they would go full scale insulting our friends and partners. The only people who've been fighting for us for all these years, like everybody, we considered longtime friends of Georgia, being members of European Parliament, being senators here in the United States, congressmen, State Department, White House, anyone who was making critical statements about the policies of Georgia was insulted, because this is what happens when you lack experience, when you lack arguments, when you are not used to debate, to be in a healthy political debate, then you start insulting the people, because there is nothing else you have to argue for your positions. We, the people represented here, together with, again, hundreds of thousands of Georgians, were fighting for the European cause as long as we remember, but also particularly for this last year and a half. Last June, when we've got denied the status, different from Ukraine and Moldova, and Georgian government failed big time. They threw European flag on the street, walked on it, burned it, because their supporters were burning actually European flags on the streets of Tbilisi. It was us, Georgian people, who picked up that flag, and we said, we are going to fight for this flag, and we are going to get to the end. And we consider the recommendation that was delivered by Ursula von der Leyen on 8th of November was recognition of that fight, recognition of that very desperate attempt of the Georgian people. Together with the opposition parties, we need to give due credit to them, because they really fought, even physically sometimes, because they were physically, particularly women, physically confronted in parliaments during the open sessions by the majority men. So it was together with the opposition parties, together with the NGOs, media, that we won this fight. And now we've got this momentum, and I will finish with this. We've got this momentum created by this positive decision, because for the first time since the Russia's aggression in Ukraine, Georgian government is on this short leash, that there is something big they will lose if they don't behave. They never considered for these last 2 years what society thought about them, what the democratic forces in Georgia thought about their actions. They were just controversial. They were attacking everybody, so confident in themselves, foolishly confident in themselves, that they ended up with EU refusing us the status last year. But now they understand that for an average Georgian, what we've heard on 8th of November is already a candidate status. It's not just a promise, it's not just a recommendation, but an average Georgian understood that, okay, done deal, tick box, move on, let's do something else. But in reality, we still have time. Until 15th of December, European Union is still in this decision-making mode, and they need to deliver decision. We know at this moment it's decided, we are going to get it, but government also can screw it up at any moment. They can do something like Russian law that they proposed this spring, or anti-LGBT legislation, or something big that will once again bring people on the streets, and then create, again, these negative attitudes, negative perceptions about Georgia, and end up with the denial of the status. They're not going to do it. They understand that it's a political suicide for them. That's why we are secured. We even joke about it, that until 15th of December, we are secure. We are not going to be beaten on the streets. We are not going to be put in jail, or something big, bad is not going to happen to us. We need to keep that momentum going. One of the reasons why we are here is exactly that as well, to ask Washington to help us with our European partners, to be on the same side with us, with our European partners, that Georgia is kept on the agenda of the European Union in the course of the next year as well. So nothing ends on 15th of December. It's just a starting point of this big journey Georgia is on once we get the status. So nobody will get a green pass with it that, okay, you did well, now you can do whatever you want. No, it's just starting. It's just starting, and every time Council meets next year, in March, in June, in October, we will be under evaluation. So they need to be cautious every time they make any decision next year, that something that we've got right now is not for granted, and does not mean that it's forever and they will be forgiven for all the mistakes or even crimes they might commit before the elections. So that's where we are at this moment right now, and hopefully together with the joint effort of the Georgian people, first of all, but also our partners worldwide, we will manage to have that European journey successful for Georgia, and we will have an answer to what is the fate of Georgia and how much it is defined in Europe.
Thank you, Tina. Anna, we mentioned already the Russian law, and we talked, and Tina just mentioned how, the last year especially has been very, very tough. And in Parliament, it was very tough for you. You were one of the people very much on the front line. Can you tell us about that, about the context and what it was? What were you doing there in Parliament?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your for the wonderful panel and for your interest in my country and its European, Euro-Atlantic future. We are all here to show that Georgia has a European and Euro-Atlantic future. This is what we believe. This is what Georgian people want. And actually, the history of Russian law and what was going on in March is a very good and strong demonstration of it, when Georgian people, seeing that the government was betraying public decision and betraying constitution, decided very powerfully to take back the power of decision-making and demonstrate at home and for everyone, friends and enemies of Georgia, that this is what Georgian people want, that they will not allow anyone, any particular government, to undermine Georgia's democratic future. So very briefly, to say what the law was about, it was about foreign agents of foreign influence, and similar to what Russia did a few years ago to kill physically and mentally the notion of civil society in its country. Georgian government copied the law and wanted to introduce it, forcing each and every individual or organization receiving funding from any foreign donor, like NED, for example, to register officially as agent of foreign influence. That would incur not only a lot of reporting obligations and huge paperwork and a lot of administrative burden on each and every individual and organization, but non-compliance would incur financial and also criminal sanctions. And it's not that funds are not transparent. Law ensures transparency, and a lot of organizations in Georgia have their own ethics code, which makes it very transparent where we get money and what we spend it for. It had nothing to do with transparency. It was stigmatizing people working for human rights, democracy, community needs. It was stigmatizing people because for any country, calling someone as agent of foreign influence, you can imagine what that means. And particularly for a post-Soviet Georgia, where we had very strong and very dramatic history of 30s repressions. And even the language of a foreign agent being called a foreign agent actually equals to being traitor of the nation. This is the connotation which was triggered by very much living memories of repressions in 30s and 50s and later on. So, and actually, when the law was under consideration, there were already posters in the streets with some famous individuals' faces from civil society, democratic activists, with the headline, traitors, traitors, traitors. And that means people were absolutely subjected to very serious and very actual security risks in the streets. So when the law was initiated, the government thought that they would manipulate Georgian public and say, oh, do you have anything against transparency? But I think it was very well understood by the Georgian public that it was not about transparency or public good. It was about getting rid of civil society, democratic activists, and basically anyone who wants Georgia to be free and democratic, and getting rid of friends who have been supporting Georgia for over 30 years now, and their support being critical for my country's success. So I think they very much underestimated the opposition they faced. They faced opposition from political parties inside and outside the parliament. They faced opposition from civil society, very diverse, very vibrant. They faced opposition from diplomatic corps and all the international community. And I think this is something to be looked at very, very closely, why that protest was so successful. I call it a very truly democratic protest. It was not like one person or one organization running the strategy or something. It was like everyone who really understood how problematic the law was, how evil the motivation behind the law was, found his or her own role and could express opinion in a wording, in a form, in a shape where one choose. So some would write a petition, others would protest in the street, others would engage into explaining Georgian public the whole evil motivation behind the law. And then these very different voices of protest and opposition found wonderful synergies with each other. I think our fight in the parliament was very important, especially, I have to say, female parliamentarians. I think GD underestimated the power of female parliamentarians very much. They kicked out men from the very beginning, and they thought, oh, no, women, we can deal with them very easily. And I think totally contrary things happened, because they didn't expect us to fight so fiercely and to back up each other and to form immediately in the room, like on the spot, to form a very strong coalition. And they received a very fierce protest and opposition and arguments and fight and value-based opposition, which they just could simply not deal with. So they were forcing us to leave the room, turning off the microphones and dragging us with the guards, dragging us out of the committee hearings. This is what was happening in the parliament, democratic parliament of Georgia, and we were forced to leave and shut up and, but it didn't stop us. It didn't stop us because we had the full backing of Georgian people standing outside in the streets. And the number of people was getting more and more and more. So I can talk ages because this is such a wonderful story of big success of Georgian people. But what I want to say is that I think this is a very important case study. What is the formula of success? And formula of success is that everyone having a role in the fight, and everyone having a role in the victory, and coming together. Coming together is something which makes magic. I just wanted to conclude my speech by referring to your wonderful question, a very precise question asked: where is Georgia heading? Is it heading to join fully Euro-Atlantic family as a state institution and state culture, or is Russia going to reclaim it back? And I think for me, it was extremely symbolic in those March days, But I think there is much more than just symbol. That a lot of people who were fighting against Russian law were actually, myself as well, but a lot of other people, were actually descendants of people who were killed and thrown out from the country by Bolsheviks in the 30s. And I think this was a very powerful moment in history. And for me, when I was protecting my country against the Russian law, I really felt this very, very important moral obligation towards my ancestors who were very high officials in the church and faced tremendous repression and physical extermination as well. So for me, that was very clear. Children of repressed people in 30s are now fighting back for their country. And yes, we do know where we want Georgia to go. And I'm sure Georgia is not alone. And this meeting and the whole meetings we are having here is a demonstration that we have very strong friends and supporters as a country. And I thank you very much for that.
Thank you for that. Anna Buchakuri, you two were in this together. You were also in the parliament, and you were live streaming. Tell us your perspective on those events.
Yes, I had an interesting role in this. Now, first things first, thank you for being here. It means a lot. Your interest, your support towards Georgia, regardless of all the controversialities in recent times. I repeat, your support to Georgian people is crucial, and Georgian people appreciate that. As for my personal role in fighting against the Russian law, first things first, I get a lot of questions since me personally and our whole team, most of our political party was part of GD for a while. Well, personally, me, I was only there for 4 or 5 months, but still, questions that come to us quite frequently is like, why GD is acting this way? When it comes to the Russian law, what I try to explain is that it has only one purpose, sole purpose, to maintain power. And to maintain power, current GD, sadly, would risk anything, including the foreign vector, the foreign policy of this country. When the Russian law, the foreign agents law, happened at the parliament, when the committee hearing, procedurally speaking, the first stage is for the committees to hear the bills, the drafts. And when the committee hearing started, somebody in the room said that there's no live here, there is no live stream here, so people cannot understand and will not have the chance to understand what is going on in the committee. I just grabbed my iPhone, and I started Facebook Live. And what happened, it was amazing. It's 21st century, come on, people. And what happened was that 4 different critical media, national TV stations, took my live from Facebook, and I became a broadcaster in a way.
That's how we knew what was going on.
Yeah, that's how I tried to have teeny bit of share in this fight of Georgian people. And afterwards, Anna explained it perfectly what happened. Why it became a success story? This is a very important question. There were 3 important aspects of it. First, we were very vocal at the parliament, especially the female representatives. Our partners, including in the United States, were also very vocal and very straightforward with the messages. And of course, the people of Georgia who got interested in what is going on. And the message regarding this foreign agents law was very simple, just 2 words, Russian law. And that was it. We did not even go through the details of it. We did not start discussions with the Georgian Dream, the ruling party, because they wanted us to. go through the details and go through the articles of the draft bill. We just said no. And we, all of us, and the international partners called it Russian law. When it comes to Georgian people, and Tina was talking about the candidacy status, regardless of anyone, regardless of how much resources or money or, I don't know, administrative resources somebody might have, no one in our country can change the historic choice of Georgian people, which is European Union, which is NATO, which is simply freedom. We have fought for it. We have been shot for it. We have died for it. It's simply impossible. So regarding Ambassador's remark, Georgian people know exactly what they want. Georgian people know exactly how to get there. All we have to do, the political parties, the politicians, and our dear friends, international partners, is to be vocal and stand with the people of Georgia. Once again, no one has a right and no one has capability of, well, let's put it this way, once again, to change historic choice of Georgia. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Hadza, you have been in politics for a long time, and we really should talk about women in politics. And on one hand, it's a really difficult situation. You have to overcome all kinds of obstacles, gender roles, prejudices. Women have less money, they have less power. But to overcome all of that, you have to become a great politician. So to persevere under these circumstances, you then learn all kinds of political skills. So maybe I can have you speak a little bit. Tell us what it's like to be a woman in politics, and how do you persevere? Where do you get strength?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Thank you so much, and Miriam, thank you very much. I mean, I'm thrilled to be here and to see so many friends of Georgia, and I'm definitely so much proud to be with my colleagues who are women, of course, and. To say frankly, even worse, I mean, I've been in the criminal justice for 20 years as a chief of the National Police of Ukraine. Yeah, it was very difficult. It is always difficult to really to have the profession which is considered to be very masculine. I don't really just differ professions, but yeah, masculinity and toxic masculinity is everywhere. But, to be in the politics for me, it is a leverage. What can I do for my country? How can I get the life of my people even better? And what can I reach? What kind of goals can I reach in order to really achieve the mission, national mission of Georgia, which is Euro-Atlantic integration? And I'm the generation, I represent the generation of Georgian, not definitely very young. But which we have seen so many wars and occupation from Russia. And for sure, I have to just, really underline that our goal and national mission is to be the part of European Union and to be the part of NATO. And as a woman, as a politician, as a citizen of Georgia, whoever, I mean, I can do, and I will be proud to do everything I can for my country. Actually, I can tell you that, Georgia is in a very turbulent situation right now. Despite the fact that we have been granted the recommendation of candidacy status, and despite the fact that, and I hope that in December 15th, when there will be the summit of the leaders of the free world and European Union, we will be granted finally the status. I mean, I have to tell you that Georgia is not on the right way and the right path right now because of the ruling party, Georgian Dream, which is not the democracy, which is not the type of democratic party. It is oligarchy, it is kleptocracy, and you know what kind of attitude of kleptocracy and oligarchy got that to the people who really fight for the future of the country. And to say frankly, I mean, I had been running twice for the office, and I'm in the member of the parliament since 2020, and to say frankly, I mean, I know that, and I noticed, and it was very obvious during the Russian law discussions in the parliament, what kind of contrast is so much important for GD, and they're scared of why they're scared of the people who are not the part of the political corruption. And these are the people who are the female politicians in the parliament. So, I mean, I have a son, and he's 23 years old. And when I asked him, and he was participated in the manifestation and protests. I mean, when we had been protesting the so-called foreign agent law, Russian law. And when I asked him, he's not politically active. He works, and actually, when I asked him, like, what brought you here in Rustaveli Avenue in front of the parliament? Why you came out with your friends? And he told me, like, when I've seen you and your friends, especially women politicians and the female politicians in the parliament, fiercely fighting against GD, I mean, these men who are sitting in the parliament and who are, I mean, who have been assaulting us verbally, even physically sometimes, I realized that there's something big is going on, and I have to come out. I called my friends called me, and they come out, they were in Rustaveli, and they protected the future of Georgia. Because everybody knows that if foreign agent law would be in action right now, Georgia would never be granted the candidacy status. So, how is life for us, politicians? Yeah, toxic environment, especially with this digitalization and the social networks, which sometimes create an opportunity, the greater opportunity, but very often, I mean, it creates the barriers and obstacles, assaults, violence, especially for women, young women who really want to be involved in the politics and who really want to be active. And I remember that, again, I mean, in social media, trolls and bots attacking the female politicians, stigmatize them. It's kind of the leverage of the propaganda for GD in order, and the ruling party in order to really just, blur the contrast. Because, yeah, I mean, they're scared of the contrast. They're scared of the people who are absolutely very acceptable for Georgian public. And that they're scared of the people who are women or men who are accepted very well during the elections. And I remember when I was running as a candidate of mayor at the second largest city in Kutaisi, in Georgia, Kutaisi, and I won the first runoff. And actually, this was a number one rule for me, and I was very proud of that time that, Georgians will vote for the women. Georgians are great, and they understand who is better, who is worse, what is good, what is bad. And I think that, as we can in the politics, in the parliament, in the future, and what we can for our citizens, do for our citizens and countries, like to do everything like we've done during the discussions on the Russian law. And I remember that I came to the parliament during the discussions of this law directly from the airport. I went to the committee hearing, and I've seen so many men in the suits sitting there and definitely shouting on the women and shouting on the people who wanted my country, tiny Georgia, to really, have this absolutely amazing future, which is so much important for the future generation. In 2024, we will have the elections, parliamentary elections. And a lot of friends of Georgia, just even here, we're here like for 3 days, they had been asked, okay, what are your plans? What do you think? Will Georgia have the pro-Western coalition, which will, bring Georgian future of the historic place. I mean, European Union and NATO. And my answer, of course, I mean, this is not, this is like among any other just discussions, and the answer is yes, we will bring Georgia to the historic place, which is the place of our people, and we will do everything, regardless women or men. And believe me, we are thousands, and we are a lot of people who really can do everything in order to achieve the #1 goal of my country. And again, I just recently read an amazing book by Maria Ressa, who is a Nobel Prize winner. And this book is, I mean, it's like the how to fight against dictator. And she was, and I'm quoting her, she was saying like, democracy means like to fight for a single law, for a single action in the parliament or out of the parliament. And democracy means that you have to fight every single day and never rest. So I think that that's our mission, the people, females or men, and because we have some very effective men politicians too, who really want to, I mean, fight for democracy. And yeah, it is #1 mission of all of us sitting here, and I'm very proud of the people who are sitting here, despite the fact that we belong to the different parties. I mean, and sometimes, especially in Georgian politics, I mean, parties fight a lot, but you know, I mean, we have to say that the coordination among the female representatives of the parties are very effective, and I think that that's what the democracy needs: talk and have some kind of consensus afterwards.
Great, thank you. You know, I think rather than go around again, why don't we take some questions? And I have many questions as well. I see David Magradze back there, please.
Hi.
Thank you. As my last name betrays me, I am from Georgia. And I work for IRI, but I don't represent IRI right here. I'm here as a Georgian, and I want to thank you all 4 of you and many other women. And thank you as a Georgian and as a father to a daughter who was standing with you those days and washing the tear gas off her face while I was sitting here and talking to her during those protests. You say Georgian people or people of Georgia, they know what they want. I'll push my skepticism here towards and say that, are we sure about that? Because I saw protests in Tbilisi, several thousand people there, but there was not much happening in other cities, Kutaisi, Tel Aviv, Batumi. There was not big overwhelming. And if the elections will be here, will be in Georgia today, most probably Georgian Dream would win these elections, which means people probably choosing that over European aspirations and European values and the values of that flag. How should I tackle this skepticism in me? Thank you.
We should collect the questions.
Should we collect a couple of questions? Okay, sure. Please.
Thank you, Margarita Tadevosyan from George Mason University. As my last name gives out, I'm Armenian. We work at George Mason in the Georgian South Ossetian, Georgian Abkhaz conflicts for since 2008 and beyond that. And my question is, what opportunities do you see this new candidate status gives Georgia to engage with Abkhaz and Ossetians on conflict issues? What new openings do you see are out there for that? Thank you.
Great question.
Should we take one more and then do a round of response? Nina, please.
Very Georgian name.
We'll take
Nina Japetidze, so wonderful to see you all here. So fabulous, all of you. And a question, very realistic challenge exists for free and fair elections in Georgia to happen. All of the politicians and civil society representatives here, and all of us who want to see Georgia in Europe and integrated with NATO, we know where the obstacles are. These are malign influences of former KGB, now FSB, pressure on Georgian voters, intimidation, threats, doing everything in this Russian power toolkit to minimize the number of voters that would show up on election day. So my question to you, when you meet with American friends of Georgia that perhaps have advice or experience or resources to help, are you hearing what you think is going to be effective? And how are you putting these models perhaps into the Georgian context, which is so unique? But this is a challenge. So how do we strengthen free and fair electoral environment in Georgia in 2024? Thank you.
Yeah.
Wants to start. Do you want to just?
I can start from the last question.
Okay.
I will start with the last question because I mean that's probably the big portion of our visit here to really talk to our friends why how United States and Georgian partners can really help regarding to ensure the will of Georgian people, which will be the huge test for Georgia itself. Well, in the recommendation, it is written. I mean, we have when Georgia had been recommended to the candidacy status, it is written very clearly that I mean, there are the 9 recommendations, which the obligatory recommendations. I mean, it's like the European Georgian foreign policy must be in compliance with European Union foreign policy, and the number 1 test it will be the free and fair elections. So you're absolutely right. The Russian-style pressure, which is intimidation, which is written in the OSCE, ODIHR, and the Venice Commission recommendation, it is not only the electoral day, but it's also the, and prior to elections. I mean, right now, it had been started that they are firing the principals of the schools, which are not under the Georgian Dream mandate, right, as a ruling party. But I can assure you that despite the fact that the pressure is very high, intimidation can be, our friends must have very clear signals to Georgian Dream officials, especially the people who represent the government of the country. And I can tell you why. During the Russian law, when we had been discussing in the parliament this terrible law, which really just they wanted to ruin the future of Georgia, it was a coordination between the opposition parties, female politicians, Georgian people, but it was very important part of this fight. And it was a message briefing of the State Department when they said, I mean, the representative of the speaker, when he said that every single MP and the person who will ruin the future of Georgia will take the personal responsibility. And this personal responsibility is well known. I mean, we all understood, and they understood what did it mean, right? So I think that very clear signals from our international partners. The second, international observation missions, which we are also just asking to, and we know that there are a lot of work about that. It means that not only the short-term missions, but the long-term missions, because, I mean, it is so much important to really understand what is going on right now regarding the elections. Also, it is helping in the campaigns, with a greater turnout, like in Poland, for instance, to bring out the youngsters and the young generation out of the homes, because they are the ones who really are in the opposition, and they really have the votes. To have the effective campaigns, to have the women participation, I mean, everything, and also to help the social, NGOs, which are so much, civil society so much stronger. So we have to understand that if Georgian Dream will use its administrative resources as to rig the elections, which will not express the will of Georgian people, they must pay the price. And that must be the very clear signal from our international partners. And everybody understands that this is not the elections about the power. This is elections about the geopolitics. European Union and the NATO, or just, being cozy with Russia and China, which is also a huge threat right now. I can't talk about, but yeah, I mean, just.
Do you want to come in on?
I'll just additionally
on David's skepticism.
Sure. I will just additionally.
Yeah,
Hadi also mentioned, but I still need to emphasize how important the high turnout of the voters is going to be. We have an example back in 2012, and trust me, even in 2012, elections was rigged. Trust me. But since this was the historic maximum of the voters' turnout, that made the previous government to transform the power to Georgian dream. As to David's skepticism, I know exactly where that's coming from. Trust me. But when it comes to, when people ask, will Georgian dream lose? It depends what you mean by losing. For me and for our team, Georgian dreams losing is if of course, they will have the most votes, obviously. But the thing is that the era of one-party rule needs to end in this country, in Georgia. We all remember, like previously when UNM came into power back in 2003, the legitimacy was huge. And in 2012, the legitimacy of GD was also huge. But each and every time, same thing happens to each and every government. Somehow they end up to have one party, one man rule. Is it possible to end one party, one man rule? I do believe it is possible. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. I know it's not going to be easy. But if you look at the recent polls, and Nino will probably can say more. If you look at the recent polls, a lot of people of Georgia say that they don't want GD in power anymore. Even more people say that they don't want UNM to be back to power. But there are a bunch of Georgians who are seeking something different from UNM and different from GD. That is a huge potential. Once again, I'm not saying that it's going to be easy, but it is possible.
Anna?
Yes, I definitely want to try to answer your question regarding South Ossetia and Abkhazia. And yes, EU membership offers enormous potential for Georgia's reinstituting Georgia's territorial integrity and reconciling actually with Abkhazians and South Ossetians. And this is why we want Georgia to be part of the EU, because this is the biggest and the most successful peace project. EU is a very successful peace project. And it's all about living standards. It's all about how humans are treated by the state. It's all about progress. And indeed, Georgia being part of the peaceful, stable, democratic union offers very good opportunity for people living in South Ossetia and Abkhazia to see where they want to be with peaceful, democratic, flourishing, economically stable Georgia and the EU, or they want to be with criminal Russia, which is sanctioned by the international community, and with Putin, who is sought by Hague. And I think the choice, if they are given this choice, is very clear where human would want to be. The same goes to, and I want to mention also a very important project, which unfortunately was stopped by Ivanishvili under Russian direction, deep sea port of Anaklia, which would have been a tremendous geopolitical step forward for Georgia and would also offer a very serious potential for reconciliation and unification of Georgia. And unfortunately, this is one of the reasons why it was targeted by Russia and stopped by Ivanishvili's regime. So, of course, there is a lot of potential, and we seek for peaceful reunion and reconciliation. There is no other way. Georgia will be united, and peace will be there, and there is no other way. We do understand Russia will do everything to this not to happen, but at the end of the day, I think Georgia's democratic and peaceful future will prevail. It has to prevail, and we will make sure it prevails. And very quickly to David's and Nino's questions, I think what will be very important for 2024 elections is methodology of observation and assessment of what counts for free and fair elections. Because elections is not just one day, and it's not about polling stations being free from law enforcement officials or security services, which we are not free from. And when we are going voting, we can see people around, not inside, but around, very close, and also sub-criminal elements to intimidate public. And this cannot be counted as free decision-making. But beyond that, because modern hybrid regimes are very creative in manipulating public opinion. And if you manipulate to that extent, you can't count that as free. So I think methodology and the instruments of assessment needs a fresh look, both from national observers and from international observers. And my last point about the skepticism, as my colleague just noted, I also understand where the skepticism is coming from, but that's also the result of authoritarian regime. The whole propaganda of GD is focused on instilling the belief in Georgian citizens that you don't count, that your voice doesn't count, that your action doesn't count. And I think March is a very good demonstration that it does count. And yes, maybe there were not that big demonstrations in some cities, but there was a demonstration in Kutaisi, there was a demonstration in Batumi. And as I said, it's not about just being in the street. Some people just wrote petitions. Some people just posted on Facebook, influencing and explaining to their neighbors, to their friends, that something really wrong was going on. And I think each action counts. And in the end, it worked. And it's all about critical mass. Maybe not everyone will go to the streets, but if the critical mass gets together and makes a very clear decision, then government has to go back and then the people win, and then the democracy wins. So this is what I'm hopeful. I'll stop here for the sake of time.
Well, very briefly, a lot was said, but I think that to answer Tato's question, the problem is, sorry, Anna, somehow in what Anna said. When you are in political opposition in these hard times and you have this feeling that the situation is so dramatic that it cannot get any worse, so we desperately need change. You don't say something like that, oh yeah, of course, Georgian Dream is going to get most of the votes. Mm-hmm. Because that's not how, what brings the confidence to those people who want to fight. And actually, it's very honest, because that's unfortunately what our opposition parties believe in. And that's exactly where the problem is. I never said in my life that the ruling party was going to get the most votes when I was in opposition, never. Regardless of what were the facts, because that's the whole idea of this fight. So I think, in reality, and what I say now, it's not just my thinking or my analysis, but this is what the mathematics says. And the elections are all about the numbers, right? So the numbers are there. You can do anything with that. Since 2014, these are facts. Since 2014, Georgian Dream never won proportional vote in Georgia. Never. There was no single election. We did 8 elections, I think. Georgian Dream lost popular vote in every single of them. Because of a very weird electoral system that we had, they had majority in parliament because to these popular votes that they were losing, they could always add the majoritarian district members, for those of you who does not know Georgian system. And because of that, they had a majority in parliament. But what makes this elections different from all the others before is that for the first time, we are going to have proportional elections. We are not going to have those additional members of parliament who come to parliament differently. So now, with everything you've heard here, what is it that makes us think that now they are more popular than they were ever before? Oh. Nothing, right? Their popularity goes down. It's absolutely clear. We don't know what percentage, how much, but we know definitely that it is down. They've lost entire portion of their electoral base of European or Europe-dreaming Georgians who were voting for them for a while because of the fear of the previous government, because of all different reasons. After March events, particularly, they're not going to vote for Georgian Dream. It is shown in every poll, in everything. But even if numbers stay as they were on last elections, still they are losing next elections. Now, the problem is that where do the rest of the votes go? This majority number of the votes that we have out there available, they are there, thrown out on the street. Someone just needs to go and grab them. The problem of Georgian politics today, party politics, I mean, is that we don't have anyone to grab those votes yet. But to put it the way that David put, is that right? When you put this context that if elections were today, Georgian Dream would win, because elections are not today. Because when elections are today, parties also have that pressure of the momentum, and then they start making decisions. Because it's still almost a year before the elections, and because of this process with the European Union, that everybody was sort of in a waiting room, waiting for the decision from the European Union, because a lot of the electoral platforms, electoral programs, promises, depending on the decision of the European Union, whether we were told yes or we were told no, those programs, policies, whatever, were completely different, right? Because of that, obviously, that momentum is not still there when parties feel pressured on making that decision right now, today. How, under what umbrellas or headings or names or numbers or colors or whatever you go to the elections. So elections are not today. That's why whatever polls say today, it's important. We need to remember it, but it's not. It does not say that this is exactly what's going to happen next year in October, because those decisions, most important decisions about the configuration of the political party landscape, are still ahead, and they are to be made. I hope by New Year they will figure out, and we will know who we are voting for. But before that, I take my word. I can send you a paper with all the charts and all the numbers. I wrote it. There is no way in the world Georgian Dream gets majority votes on these elections. Never happened. Is not, except for first elections, and it's not going to happen. Now, all our thinking should be about who grabs those votes that are out there on the streets. People are just wandering around, and nobody goes and talks to them and grabs those votes. But it's, again, because that momentum, that pressure on the political parties is not there yet. And I'm pretty sure that after 15th of December, we will have all those structured electoral subjects already out there. And after the New Year, they will engage in campaign.
Mm-hmm. I want to make a comment about David's question, because, I mean, you're not the only one, I mean, asking that question. And, well, yeah, we're sitting here, and all our partners are kind of skeptical that, okay, just you're complaining about Georgian Dream. What do you do? I mean, in order to really just decrease the skepticism, which is kind of here, and you have it, a lot of Georgians have. So, and I'm not saying that we political parties, I don't represent any political parties now, but we don't have the homework. So, but I understand that this is a homework that we have to do until the elections. And yeah, Tina is right. I mean, we have elections in 1 year. So the political power, which will be the full contrast of Georgian Dream and Ivanishvili, will win the elections. Not win, but they will gain the votes. Not only necessarily one, but several. Why I left UNM? I mean, I was not the last person there. I used to be the chief of the faction. I left UNM because, I mean, it didn't turn out to be the full contrast of Bidzina Ivanishvili and Georgian Dream because of the recent developments in the party. We parties need essence, substance, homework, and the very much important leverage which they have, talk to the people. Because what Ivanishvili right now wants, and he always wanted that, is like to polarize the Georgian society. And the polarization is amazing leverage for a Georgian Dream. Yeah, I mean, polarization. But believe me, people of Georgia, and you know it better, I mean, also are tired of this polarization, and they understand that if they want to have the European future, and this means a lot for them, they have to find as Tina said, I mean, the political force and the party or whatever, I mean, platform or the group of the people who will be responsible for this party, who have the idea what kind of Georgia we want to build up. And believe me, I mean, people sitting here, we understand, despite the different ideas, and what kind of, I mean, system we want to build up, I mean, to be in compliance with the European Union and NATO.
I want to take one more round. I saw some hands. There's a gentleman here. There's a lady there, and you were, okay. Let's take those three. Are there more questions? This is probably the last time around.
Thank you very much. My name is also Tina. I'm also Georgian. I hope afterwards there will be another person who is not Georgian that will ask a question. Well, thank you so much. It was very inspiring. And I'm also someone who will but who will vote in 2024 parliamentary elections. And I have the main questions that I have is if there's any chance that there will be a united opposition coalition. Because I'm asking this question and I have been hearing based on what you have said that there's no need to have coalition, but I very much believe that we need a coalition to win majority in the upcoming parliamentary elections. At least that is my belief. And we have mentioned polls, and recent IRA polls also shows that GD has 20%, and then the United Nations Movement has 14%, and the parties I would vote for have 2 or 3%. And GD also has proved that they are really good when it comes to manipulating facts and twisting it to their own advantage, especially if we get candidate status. They can also manipulate and twist this fact to their own advantage and use this in regions. So that's why I do understand that there are many differences that different opposition parties have, but why have there not been specific steps taken to form this coalition? That's my main question, because I do believe that 2024 elections are very important, and that's when Georgia's European path will be decided. And to connect, another minor question that, well, not minor, but question connected to that is also, I do understand, I do hear and sympathize with the cause of the opposition, things that we see Georgia as part of Europe. I completely understand and agree with this, but what are some specific steps that you will be suggesting to the voters in region, not just in Tbilisi, because I feel citizens in Tbilisi are more or less well informed, but what are the specific steps that you will be suggesting to them in the regions, including conservative voters, because we have to acknowledge the fact that Georgia is a conservative country outside of Tbilisi. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think there were two more questions here. We're getting more and more. But if we could keep them short, and then we'll give everyone a chance to respond.
I'm Peter Humphrey, an intelligence analyst and a former diplomat. To a large extent, you guys share the same problem with NATO when it comes to Ukraine, and to a lesser extent, Moldova, and that you, of course, have occupied territory. And as such, if you were to suddenly join NATO, Article 5 nominally would kick in, and nobody wants that. So nobody's going to let you into NATO if you indeed have occupied territory. So I'm wondering if there's any possibility of South Ossetia and Abkhazia getting sort of a Northern Ireland deal, where they get to run most of their affairs autonomously, but they use your money, they fly your flag, and Georgia handles foreign policy. And that way, the country would be nominally united for NATO membership.
Okay. I think there were there's a lady there. And then, okay.
Hi, my name is Hatun, again, Georgian, sorry. I represent IFES, and as you all know, there will be technology introduced during 2024 election, and I wanted to hear your opinion. And do you think that will increase trust towards results, or not, or what you see as what support we can provide, or what you see needs to be done in order the technology to work properly on E-Day? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts today. It's really inspiring. I think if you could just leave us with anything, what do you see your partners at State and Defense doing to support you?
And did you want to also ask?
There is one question.
And then there's, okay, here and there.
I'm a politician myself. I was Minister of Women in the second one in the world in Iran before the revolution. And I'm very, very impressed with your presentations. I think it's amazing, the work that's being done by women in Georgia. And I said this about my own past because this was 40 years ago when the revolution in Iran happened. And what I've learned since then, being in this country, you're talking about 2014, we have an election in this country, and heaven knows what's going to happen in this election. And what I was wondering is the work that I've been doing here since the revolution in Iran is that with the realization that women are the important force around the world in bringing security, human security, instead of military security, human interaction, human rights, equality. And if that is what we want to do, we have to work across borders. We have to work with others. And inside each country, we have to mobilize the women in civil society. And I wondered, for one thing, we would love to have my organization, Women's Learning Partnership, is an organization of 20 partner organizations around the world who work in 60 countries in 28 languages. And we haven't been to Georgia because you're between Asia and Europe, and we're mostly in the developing world of Asia, Middle East, and so forth. But we would love to have your wisdom, your political savvy, and to work with you. And I wonder, how strong is civil society? If you're going to win your wonderful ideas, how much have you been able to organize people to come and support you? Men and women, because we work with both. And I'm hoping that you will have some ideas for us, and possibly I'm definitely going to be contacting you and hoping to see what we can do for you and what you can do for passing your wisdom to us. Because, for instance, the interaction between political opposition parties is amazing. It's not very, you look at this country, it's almost impossible everywhere. So thank you for what you have said already, and I'm looking forward to hearing your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want one more here? Let's just gather up, and then we'll go around once. And actually, while he's going over, we have not yet, I want to throw one out as well, which is we haven't spoken about President Zurabishvili, and I think that's,
impeachment
she's a very, another success this year was preventing the impeachment of President Zurabishvili. She's a very important woman in politics. She may have a role in the future, so I want to be sure. I'm going to throw that out as well, so please.
Well, now this is on. Anin Shrikwat, Voice of America, Georgian Service. A quick question. You discuss candidate status, but you don't discuss how you had a mixed messaging on the question. On the one hand, I think everybody in the opposition understood that for Georgian Dream, which is on the one hand standing on the anti-Western sentiments, on the other hand, actually relying on the pro-European voters, that this is a huge boost in popularity and is to help win the elections. Why did you have mixed messaging on this question, and does it hurt your standings going forward? Same time, do you think it would have been better to be honest about the idea that if Georgia was to get candidate status with an anti-democratic and openly anti-Western government, that would actually not help its democratic future? Thanks.
Okay.
We should
Which way around? Start with you again?
Okay, I will take a NATO question. The Article 5 and occupation. Well, yes, but I don't agree with you because half of Germany was under the occupation, it did not prevent NATO to get Federal Republic of Germany as a member of NATO. Why should it be different for Georgia? That's been an argument going around all the time. If it is about the formulas are also out there. Former Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Rasmussen, very adequately described it, that Georgia in NATO, with the reservation on Article 5 for the occupied territories, full stop. I mean, and actually, technically speaking, nobody ever told us that because of the occupation of the regions of Georgia, our doors are closed with NATO. Arguments were always different and had nothing to do with that, because they also understand that they cannot write that argument on paper. It just does not work. But when it comes to second part of your question, absolutely, of course, we've been off. I mean, okay, not everybody, of course, in Georgia. Unfortunately, after 30 years of start of the first war in Abkhazia, there are still some political movements, parties, organizations in a country who are scared even of the word federalism, not to talk about more than federalism. And that's very unfortunate because, well, I always think that this is a long-gone subject and nobody buys our federalism anymore anyway, so whatever we offer to Abkhaz doesn't really make any difference. But with the clear European path for Georgia, with a clear NATO path for Georgia, and most importantly, if Georgia is becoming a country where its own citizens from the Georgia proper, from the Georgian-controlled territories, are not dreaming only about getting out of the country and going through this hell that some of them go when they, for example, illegally come to this country via Mexico on those boats, risking their lives. If that's not the case anymore, once that's not the case anymore, of course, Georgia will have more pride and legitimacy also to make all the offers to Abkhaz and South Ossetians. Today, Georgians from the capital city, from Batumi, from Kutaisi, from the rest of the country, do not want to live in that country anymore. So what is it we have to offer? Northern Ireland deal, even more. There were proposals around over these years granting full autonomy to Abkhazia, particularly when it comes to Abkhazia, having Abkhazia on equal basis, becoming integral part of Georgia with the statehood, full statehood and sovereignty solved. But when it comes to economic affairs, when it comes to cultural affairs, education policies, anything you name it, obviously full autonomy is on the table. But again, as long as we are not secure country for the rest of us, I don't think that any of those proposals have necessary legitimacy that by which you start discussion with them. And that's the biggest problem for us. And as to last question, to Anna's question, I'm not sure I understood the question actually, but I don't think that there is, and I might be wrong, maybe I did not understand the question properly, but if what you said is that getting the status under this semi-dictatorial or whatever authoritarian regime benefits Georgian dream, and that's why efforts should have been put in place not to allow it, I completely disagree, because Georgian dream has nothing to do with the status. Georgian dream is out of the game since the last June. Last June, they've already lost that status. We are catching up. We are not still there. We are Ukraine and Moldova when we were front runners over the years, over the decade. Georgian dream has nothing to do with it. The problem is not in Georgian dream getting popularity with it. The problem is that, unfortunately, some of the political forces in country have problem with straight messaging, and they cannot get the story out as it is. Georgian dream, to be perfectly clear, lost that bid last year. That's it. They are done. They are done with that particular issue. After that, whatever happens with the European Union dream of Georgians, that will be because of the rest of Georgia, without them excluding Georgian dream. If Georgian dream manages to benefit on it, they should become really democratic force. which unfortunately is not going to happen. Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, in a week, in a month, another case of similar to Russian law will happen. And everything will be back to the reality. If someone is still under this image that Georgian Dream actually did anything for having that status achieved. So that's why, for me, personally, it was a very unprofessional, not serious talk, whomever was arguing from that point of view. We are all going to be around for the next year, and we will see how much of a further sabotage will be at place from the ruling party on this road leading up to the European Union. If the opposition political parties will not manage to get a credit that they actually deserve, it's not something they need to manipulate with, but the credit that they deserve on that road, that will be just their mistake, not because Georgian Dream necessarily did something else, but it will be mistake of the opposition parties per se.
Anna?
Yes, should I go?
Should I just go through electronic voting, how to support you over this year, and women's mobilization?
I think Tina's question, what we are offering to the people in the regions, and not only, yeah, sure. Well, first of all, as you see, a number of Georgian citizens are present here, and I think this is an issue we should look from the perspective of elections as well, because a lot of people living in immigration are not simply allowed, for technical reasons, not in terms of legal reasons, to be part of elections, because there are hundreds of Georgians living abroad and their votes are just not there. So one of the very serious initiatives from my party and from the opposition in general is to make sure that Georgian immigrants can be part of decision-making for 2024 elections. And I think this is a very important initiative. We should not forget about our immigration, which is contributing enormously to Georgia's success and economic well-being, as much as we have well-being in the country, in a poor country. But your share is great, and we are not forgetting about it. And we want to make sure that everyone, no matter whether you are living in DC, where we will have polling station, or in other states and in other countries where we technically do not have polling stations, you are able to vote. This is a very important initiative, first. Second, what are we offering? Yes, I do agree with you. You didn't say it, but I think you know that Georgian politics is extremely ego-dominated, and very little focus on actual substance of what are the problems facing the real people and what are the solutions, policy solutions we're offering. And I have to say, parties in the middle, and again, particularly female politicians, are champions of bringing content into Georgian politics and really drawing up policy solutions of what we are going to offer for justice system reform, which has been forever Achilles' heel of Georgian democracy. And my party, for example, has 4 specific legal initiatives registered in the parliament, long-term as well as short-term solutions for justice system reform. The same goes for pension reform. The same goes for youth unemployment, which we have a very concrete policy proposal how to contain Russian influx, which is a very serious threat for Georgia. Russian citizens coming in without any visa control, without any other real checks, establishing businesses, purchasing real estate, etc. That's an ongoing economic occupation of Georgia. And we do have that specific policy proposals, and we will make sure, of course, it's not easy in this propaganda and disinformation situation, but we will make sure that we bring that message to the citizens, including in the regions. But I do agree, that's number one homework parties have to do. And we are aware of that, and we will make sure that this time it's done differently than in previous elections. Trust in the system, I think it's good, but it's not, it can go one way or the other. It depends on the whole process. Knowing elections very well as a political actor and as an observer in my previous life, it's not about just one particular piece of a puzzle. Again, we need the whole process. Of course, electronic part and modern technologies can help it, but if the entire process is broken, if there is no free free environment for campaigning, etc., I don't think just electronic system can help.
The justice system.
Yeah, if there is no proper observation, if there is no ability to appeal electoral violations, etc., then, so we need to fix the whole process, and I believe modern technologies can be a good, positive step forward if the whole system is more or less fixed as much as we can fix it. And my last point, I definitely want to answer the question about candidacy status. No, I don't think Georgian people have forgotten how many obstacles GD has created on the way to Euro integration. I don't think they forgot that it was actually political opposition who called people in the streets to file an application for membership. GD didn't want that. That's a fact. I don't think people are forgetting that. I don't think people are forgetting that first time we didn't get it because of GD's political rhetorics. I don't think people forget it that they didn't do the reforms, and I don't think people forget the March events, and I don't think people forget Lazare, who is in prison still, a youngster who was demonized by GD, and it's more than 9 months. They cannot prove his crime committed during the March events, but he is still in prison. I don't think Georgian people forgot about the artists who are now under the investigation by the security services for participating in an IREX-funded project, for God's sake. So I think people, training, just a training. So this is what GD is. This is what GD is about. And I don't think there is a lack of facts or evidence that they didn't change, they didn't become democratic. So it's all about the country. For me, it was about the country. And it's very important, we should not forget about the conditionality. Now, EU has very serious leverage over Georgian government with the conditionality. And look at the reforms. The 9 points, I think, are even stronger than 12 points. And that's good for the country. That's a very positive pressure they have to do. They have to behave. And elections is part of the conditionality. So for now, I think it's very good for the country. And we political parties have to do our own share. But I think it's only good for Georgian people. And I think we have to make sure that facts are put straight forward, stories are put straight forward, and we do not allow their propaganda to prevail, as it was in March. We all managed that their propaganda failed, and people won.
Thank you. Do you want to?
Well, I'll probably reply to the question regarding coalition. That's my favorite question, usually. One thing that we have to define is that there are 3 different definitions. There is coalition that usually happens after the elections. When parties unite, that's a different story. And cooperation, that's also a different story. We do cooperate. The opposition cooperates at the parliament, I mean, when it comes to certain laws, when the Russian law was going on. So cooperation is out there. Maybe we need better cooperation, maybe, but still, it is happening once again at the parliament, per topics, let's put it this way. When it comes to coalition, as I said, coalitions happen after the elections, when people of Georgia, when the voters define who should get to the parliament in a certain convocation. When it comes to, and I won't allow myself to talk about other parties, I will only talk about my party perspective. When it comes to unification and to unite the parties, politics, especially in Georgia and probably everywhere, is not a math. Like, if my party unites with, I don't know, with who, it might damage me and it might damage the other party because we have a very specific history. You know where my party is coming from, right? So once again, for our team, and actually the reason why I mentioned the polls, the polls show that GD and UNM is more unpopular in Georgia till this day, after 11 years, than GD, and obviously that's a red line. As for the other pro-Western opposition political parties, as I said, for instance, we are Party for Georgia, roots for other pro-Western, smaller opposition parties. I don't know, for instance, LELO. We want LELO to be in the next convocation at the parliament because I prefer LELO to each and every other political party, obviously. But as I said, it's not about the unification of different political parties because I don't believe that it works as a math. It doesn't add up that way. So to be really brief, that's my opinion. As I said, I don't allow to talk about other parties, but that is how my party sees it. And yes, cooperation per topic is very important. And usually we manage, at some topics, we manage to do that at the parliament.
I will go with the elections question again. I mean, that is very much important. And the signals we got here also from our partners, not only here, but also, in Brussels and some other capitals. It is the documentations and the evidences of the violations, not only the electoral day, but also pre-electoral, campaigns. Because, it's all connected, right? We don't have the free judiciary system. In order, when there are some violations, you go to the court and, you appeal to the court in order to really just get it right. But unfortunately, I remember that when I was campaigning in Kutaisi, and despite all the violations, we managed to win the first runoff. And we had about 60 appeals to the court because of the violations. For instance, there were a lot of new lists in the places of detention, etc. But none of them had been, just approved by the court. Nationwide, it was about 700 appeals from UNM, the party I represented back then. But unfortunately, again, it was not so. There were not the final decision of the court. So. Good evidence also, and I know that the civil society, they are in a cooperation with political parties. And again, also we agreed, at the parliamentary groups that we will do our best in order to notify international organizations and also our partners about the evidences of the violation. For instance, right now, ISFET, which is well known and the high-ranking member of the civil society, they are defending the principals of the schools who had been fired because of the electoral year, right? The school principals, just as general education system, which is absolutely under the GD. So again, campaigns, strong campaigns of the parties, and the electoral process itself. Actually, I don't agree to my colleagues in the opposition who are saying that, election doesn't mean anything, and the electronic elections, this is a process which can be, it doesn't mean that the opposition will win, etc. I think that we need the greatest turnout in Georgia, and we need to assure the people of Georgia, especially the younger generation, that, okay, you have to come out and that you vote. And every other initiative regarding that, of course, would be in benefit of Georgian society. Evidence is, I've been told, women participation. Every initiative is welcomed, especially when it comes to the women participation. And as we have said, misogyny and sexism and all this manipulation and stigmas and all this assaults in the parliament. Just recently, I want to share this experience also. Just recently, we were sitting in the plenary session, and one of the members of the Georgian Dream assaulted verbally one of our colleagues, very decent parliamentarian, the chair of the defense committee. And this assault, deputy chair, sorry, and this assault was absolutely like, sexual assault, what he said. And the chair of the parliament, I mean, he gave him the opportunity to continue the speech.
Prolonged the minutes.
I've seen a lot. I don't want really to quote him. I've seen a lot of assaults. I mean, I used to be the chief of the national police, and I've seen a lot. But I've never ever seen this kind of assault to the female politicians. And I remember that I wanted to physically contradict the person who were sitting next to me, like, in a couple of inches. So I came to him and I was like screaming, like, what are you saying? Why are you saying that? I wanted to physically, confront him. This was my first reaction when I've heard that. So again, I mean, in these systems, and the women against system are, they have a lot of obstacles. Or any other initiatives coming to Georgia, like, the missions and we have a lot of communication with the OSCE mission or some other NATO parliamentary assembly or PACE, etc. So I think that every other initiatives would be very much interesting. I mean, we cooperate with IRI, NDI, and we talk a lot about how we can really just help, especially young women in the political parties to really get stronger and to campaign and to have the will, to participate into and be engaged into the political life of the country. Candidacy, etc. I want to just continue with Anna's point about the status. Well, it's about the mass, right? So I don't really believe, and we have a lot of polls, that the GD can gain pro-Western votes. Never. I mean, GD lost pro-Western votes, and all polls, which are, Edison or IRI, NDI, etc. Just recent polls. They showed that GD lost pro-Western polls. The voters pool, and they will never gain them, despite the fact that we can be granted like hundreds of statues. This is first. Second, we are politicians, and the political parties must act in the frame of what is the interest of Georgian people. And I think that the interest of the Georgian, not think, but I'm sure, because the interest of Georgian people wants to be closer to Europe and to be away a little bit from Russia. And it was 85%, again, the latest IRI poll, that the Georgian people, that they want to be granted a status. This was the will of Georgian people. And I think that this was very much important. And the third, well, in March, and we have a very good benchmark here, that was set by Ursula von der Leyen. She said, like, in March, all countries must come to Brussels, Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia, and must really just, report in March. It's like in a couple of months, report about progress made in reforms in March. So Georgian people understand that, after the status, if we will be granted, and we got our obstacles, like Hungary, for instance. After the December, there will be some reforms that are, very much important to really just report to Brussels. And there will be the open up the accession talks, which is also so much important. So again, it's not the end of the story. It's not the progress of GD. And I think that it's about all Georgian people, not on the opposition or political forces, but it's about the interest of Georgia. And it's about the interest of Georgian people who definitely consider that it is better for the country, to be away from Russia, even then maybe a little. And I wanted to say a couple of words about the president, maybe just which we're here between lunch and you. Yes, but again, I have the right to say it because I was a person opposing her a lot, because I'm in the opposition since 2012. And, as a member of the government of Mikhail Saakashvili, as a minister, director of the Police Academy, despite the fact that I was not a member of the political party, actually I contradicted her as an candidate of presidency, a president of Georgia, because of, and she was a candidate of President Ivanishvili, I mean, Georgian dream. And actually, she became the president because of the support of the majority, right? So, and we remember, by the way, again, this is about the female politicians. When we talk about the female politicians, there were the billboards in Georgia about Salome Zurabishvili, about our president. And she was not on the billboards. I mean, they had the cheer of the all men, you know, just like Ivanishvili and the Kobachita, who's the chair of the Georgian dream. They were on the billboards. So this is an attitude, again. What kind of attitude? I mean, the ruling party had to the female presidential candidate. And again, still, I can't accept her statements about who started the war in 2008. I criticized every other statements about, you know, just somebody just shelling Tskhinvali, etc., etc. But whenever she took the position she took, and I mean pro-Ukrainian position, and I mean the pro-Western position, it was the last year, not last year, it was when 2020, when 24th of February, when Russia full-scale aggression had been started in Ukraine. She had very pro-Ukrainian position when Georgian Dream had absolutely a nasty anti-Ukrainian propaganda, especially, you know, after 24. They had this pro-Russian propaganda that everybody who wants to, who will support Ukraine, they want Georgia to drag into the war. I mean, detrimental, totally detrimental for Georgian foreign policy priorities. Again, pro-Western position, and again, the criticizing Georgian Dream, criticizing a lot about their foreign policy priorities. And I remember when it was Independence Day of Georgia last year, when she came out on the Rustaveli Freedom Square and you know, in front of the whole nation, she said like very strong words, like criticizing Georgian Dream. That's why, I mean, the Georgian Dream tried to impeach her, right? I mean, and that's why they knew that they didn't have the votes in the parliament, because we said, despite the fact that, again, I totally was against her in 2018, but we said, like opposition, even UNM, including UNM, that no, we will not vote for her impeachment because, yeah, I mean, it is bad for Georgian European integration. It is bad for the, you know, I mean, the final phase of the decision of granting the status or not. So I think that until now, if she will be defending the pro-European positions of Georgia, of course, I mean, we will be, you know, by her side.
Great. That's a great place to end, because I would say that's the opposition came together around two very, you know, comes together around Europe, comes together around opposition to the Russian law, and came together to protect the president, and those are the institution of the president, which was very, very important. And I just want to end on that positive note and congratulate you again that the candidate status is coming, and we will be watchful over the next year. Wish you well, and we'll support you in the struggles ahead. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Miriam, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for excellent moderation.